Trump's executive order shrunk 7 federal agencies, including the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Since then, the majority of the Institute of Museum and Library Services staff has been placed on administrative leave, according to the American Federation of Government Employees Local 3403, a union representing the Institute of Museum and Library Services workers. Earlier today, the Institute of Museum and Library Services notified the entire staff that they are being placed on administrative leave immediately. American Federation of Government Employees 3403 said in a statement on March 31. The notification followed a brief meeting between Department of Government Employees staff and Institute of Museum and Library Services leadership. In early April, the American Library Association and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the largest union representing museum and library workers, sued the Trump administration for its Institute of Museum and Library Services cuts. They cited the importance of local libraries as trusted public institutions and stated that the Institute of Museum and Library Services closure had already caused a domino effect of harm to the operations of libraries across the nation. Cindy Hole, president of the American Library Association, says that many of the 125,000 libraries in the nation utilize Institute of Museum and Library Services funding to support things like summer reading programs and translation services. Without the services of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, she says libraries are already facing huge challenges, and she has heard of short-term panic and tough decisions being made from librarians who are members of the American Library Association. The greatest impact to reduction in funding and services will be felt by the small and rural communities across this country, Hole says. How can any legislators say that small and rural communities do not need access to the internet? They do not need access to public computers. They do not need access to books and reading. The Institute of Museum and Library Services was first created and funded by Congress in 1996 and charged with supporting the nation's libraries and museums. The Institute of Museum and Library Services awarded $266 million in grants and research funding to cultural institutions last year. Hole says the problem with the federal government kicking this funding of library services from the Institute of Museum and Library Services down to the states and local governments is that we do not have a comparable model of the kinds of free services available to communities the way they are in libraries.